Welcome to the final episode of our Orbital Blues series, everyone. I know it's the beginning of September, and we promised the next series starts next week, but we couldn't cut out any of the fantastic time we had with game designer Sam Sleney to cap off this discussion-heavy series for our Orbital Blues. But before we get to that, here's what to expect in our calls to action. Join me here after the show to hear about the latest shows on the One Shot Network, information about our Patreon, as well as the normal patron thank yous. With all of that out of the way, enjoy the show, everyone. Last time on Character Creation Cast, Sam took us through his early years in the world of RPGs before diving right into some more industry discussion about layout design and issues with the current state of the RPG review process in the community. We're picking up right where we left off last time. Enjoy.
It's a good discussion, though, because I wish that because so much of it is still community, I really wish that there were more like tools around helping people do those things. Because like I said, when people are doing it as a hobby and everything, you don't necessarily have access to all those tools or the knowledge to do really good layout and editing and things like that. And I really wish that there was so much more support for people to do that, because it would make games a lot more accessible.
I really wish that, and someone out there who is more well-connected or more web HTML coding savvy than I can have this idea for free. I really wish as an RPG industry we had some equivalent of like Rotten Tomatoes or Letterboxd, where you could review games in a way that didn't directly affect their sales availability like it does on drive-through. So like drive-through, you don't get 5 stars, then you're not going to be up there, you're not going to be easily findable, etc. I wish we had some kind of review aggregate that didn't link to sales and didn't link to charts or whatever, where people could look at reviews written by non-affiliated parties or like non-journalistic parties, etc., giving fair, open and honest reviews of like what they liked or didn't like about a product. You know, a letterboxed kind of thing, like, I had to flick through this and I like the layout, but I didn't like the way combat is done. Or, you know, actually this is just a bit of a reskin of X or Y, you know, and it not affect that person's livelihood in such a direct way as like, you know, not getting a 5-star on itch or drive-through would do.
Yeah, because you're right. There is that really big push, I think, in a lot of creative spaces generally. Like,
I need 5 stars just to be visible. Please give me 5 stars just so I can get some sales.
Right. And like that feeling of like, if you're not going to give 5 stars, just don't do anything at all, because it will bring down the overall rating.
That is the fact that we've come to that is... It's crazy. If
unhelpful.
If that was going on in film or television or video games, people in that...
I mean, even Amazon reviews, like...
Yeah, people would be scratching their heads and be like, how did we get to this point? Why is this okay? If someone said like, sorry, you can't have a review copy of this video game unless you're going to give it a 5 stars or a 10 out of 10, that would make the news in gaming circles. It does make the news in game circles, but here in RPG land, we're kind of like, please don't give it a review unless you're going to give it 5 stars, because I need the visibility just to get this in more people's hands, so I then know
it's
what
like
those
that even
people
with the
think
podcast.
of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I love to hear constructive feedback from like our listeners and stuff. I would love to improve and make it better for people, but like, please don't do that on iTunes.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
place, you know, like,
Yeah, it's a shame that the system, as in with capitals there, the system has
yes.
priced in algorithms and reviews to the point where it affects what we can consume. Because I'm sure that, like, you know, we're all a bit older. We're not Zoomers. We're not Gen Z. We will have consumed media that has made us who we are and has made us make the things that we have made that is garbage. That is definitely not 5 stars. You know, some of the things that I love the most are things that are not critically well loved. Some of like my favorite things are terrible. And it's good and fine and should be encouraged to like things that are less than perfect. And, you know, I can look at games and films and TV shows and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to show you, like, you know, I can say to someone like, I'm going to show you this thing and I love it. That part in it, we're not going to talk about that. We know it's terrible, but we're not going to talk about it. Or like you'll be watching something.
Or in our case, we cover Palladium.
Yeah, you'll be watching something with someone, you know, like show my girlfriend something and be like, look at me and be like, what was that about? I'm like, we know in the fandom we don't acknowledge that part. We don't talk about it. Or if we do, we make fun of it. And then we move past it. And we just take this as a whole. And this is a thoroughly 3-star experience, but it's a 3-star experience I love.
Right. Well, and I want to know why, because that's the thing about reviews and like this push for 5 stars and things that I feel is really missing, because I want to know what people like truly felt about it too. And were there things that like didn't work for you, even if they aren't things that are like bad about the game, that you're just like, this wasn't my vibe? And like,
about
please
Orbital
know
Blues.
this going in. Yeah, right. No, about games in general. Really.
Oh, right.
You know, like I want to be able to know, like would go online and look at it and be like, okay, so this is really crunchy, or like this rule is like kind of complicated, and you know, it's like I'm not the only one feeling that way, or I know that it's not for me, or you know, any of that too. It's helpful for both users and creators.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite RPGs is Degenesis by Six More Vodka. That's not you can actually download all of it for free now, because Six More Vodka got contracted by Riot Games to do all of the art direction for League of Legends. So the money they made off of RPGs became chump change, to the point where they just said, Degenesis, you can have it all for free. Nice. And it's one of my favorite RPGs. Would I recommend it to anybody? Absolutely not.
I feel that way about like a lot of games too. They're like, it
is an incredibly beautiful book. I am lucky enough to have a physical before they stopped selling it. They don't sell physicals anymore. It's a beautifully laid out book that really like inspires me in terms of like how crisp and clean the design is. But the combat and the mechanics are crunchy and bloated. The art is absolutely phenomenal, but some of the content in the book definitely went through sensitivity readers, and then other parts of it definitely didn't go through sensitivity readers. I don't know, for whatever reason. But it's like nothing in there is terribly problematic, but there are definitely some parts that when I've ran it, I've just been like, yeah, that's not canon, or like, yeah, we're just going to ignore that part.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Let's not go there or whatever. But as like a game, I love it. Like I love the setting. I love the art direction throughout the book, the presentation of it, the world that they've built, like the lore, the meta plot, etc. is just like all chef's kiss. Would I recommend it? Would I give it a 5-star review on this aggregate? No. And I think it's fine to love things imperfectly. It's fine to be conscious of the things that something has done wrong, whether that's like creatively or mechanically, and be like, I still like this thing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if it's like problematic or like, you know, has deep issues, you should still love it. Critique everything.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of like, I love it, but I logically recognize
Yeah.
like the parts that are not good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've talked about several times on this show too, the fact that like sometimes when you really, really love something, you become even more aware of those little places where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you've become so invested and so like knowledgeable about the like how it all works and fits together that like, you know, my favorite games are the ones that I like have the most problems with because I've played them so much that I know all the places where it could work better.
Yeah. I am a raging anti-capitalist. I do not like paying subscription fees. I do not like big corporations. All of that.
We didn't catch that from this game at all, actually. So that's like a really
I have a real
shocking bit of
soft
information.
spot for World of Warcraft, and it's like being a Catholic. If it gets into you early, it's always there. And it did. And I will always have a soft spot for World of Warcraft, no matter how many like bad things it goes through or how many awful things Blizzard does as a company. I'm always like, damn it. I hate to love World of Warcraft, but it has a special place in my heart for like, you know, getting me really into fantasy and role playing and swords and sorcery stuff at a young age.
Yeah.
But I can recognize that, you know, that's a company that's done some terrible things. That's a game that has like had some real big mechanical, creative, whatever have you, missteps. But I'll be like, yeah, I'll always sort of, you know, like, you know.
I get it. I still say a prayer to St. Anthony when I lose my keys. So
yeah.
That's...
Yeah, it's always like I've always got like a sort of soft spot for it, and it'll probably never leave me. Even though, you know, I've had instances where I've gone, I'm never touching that game again. God, like I'll never support Blizzard again. And then, you know, a couple of years later, I'm like, I find myself, you know, pulling out my credit card and being like, well, here's your $8.99 a month, you rats.
Yep.
That's like.
But no, I do it grudgingly.
Yeah, you know, I do it begrudgingly, and if I couldn't do it, if there was a way for me to not do this, I would do it. But I do enjoy clearing a 5-man dungeon with my friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, it's fine to go into role-playing games like that. There's a lot of people who staunchly rage against Dungeons and Dragons, but I can tell you from all of those years of running it at university for people new to our role-playing games, it's for a lot of people the foot in the door.
It's the most accessible, and I think that people
it's
like
your
that
interest
has
leader,
value,
and that has value, and you can play it. You can run it for those people for a couple of weeks, and after you've run it for them for a couple of sessions, that's when you can go, I'm glad that you've all enjoyed this. What if I told you there's other games out there that are easier than this, that are lighter than this physically? I don't have to bring these heavy books with me every week.
Or even that like cater more to the interests you've shown at the table. That like, you
guys really enjoy like doing the social politicking stuff, but there's only really charisma and performance, etc. How about we switch to something, you know, that gives you more mechanical support for this if you want it, or we switch to something that has no mechanical support for this whatsoever and will be all ad-libbed and purely like role play based. And once you've done it for a bit and then you propose those things, there's like a good chance they're going to go, yeah, sure. It's very rare that if you know, ease into it and then spring the change on people, they're going to go for it, as opposed to springing the change on them right from the get-go. You know, someone would come to us and be like, yeah, I really want to play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not going to immediately turn around and go, it's garbage. We're going to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay instead. That would be like, you know, that would be too hostile.
That's some gatekeeping is what that is.
That's gatekeeping, yeah. And D&D, for all of its issues and like all of Wizards of the Coast's like issues as a company, its cultural presence makes it a great gate opener and gets more people into our hobby. Not defending it. I have major problems with it as much as any other indie publishing person. But
Right.
I understand
But
it's
there are a
valuable.
lot of people that wouldn't be in this community to begin with if it weren't for that game.
Exactly.
And I think that's worth recognizing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I have players whose first games were D&D. Mine wasn't, but, you know, I realize I'm the exception to the rule. And, you know, there's a lot of people who wouldn't be in this industry if it wasn't for Dungeons & Dragons, and maybe they had a negative experience with it. But now they're playing something else. And I think by shutting
I didn't play
ourselves...
D&D until my 30s.
Yeah, if we just talk about nothing but A team versus B team, then I don't think we grow as an industry. And I think it's important to recognize what tools are in your toolbox as a GM and as someone who brings more people into this hobby and keeps it growing and flourishing. And D&D has its strengths, it has its weaknesses. And if you're in an environment where you regularly meet new people or you have new people coming to you wanting to know about role-playing games, 9 times out of 10, their cultural touchstone for that is going to be Dungeons and Dragons. Exactly. And when they ask you, if they ask you that they want to play Dungeons and Dragons, that's I want to play role-playing games in layman's terms.
Right.
And it's our job to be like, yeah, sure, I'll run Dungeons and Dragons for you for a couple of weeks. You run a dungeon, you know, and then like you see what that person likes or dislikes about the system, because it's rare that anyone will unequivocally love it. All aspects. That's when you can go, okay, so you liked this element of the game, or I found as a GM you ended up doing this. How about we play this? Instead.
Definitely.
And you can open that door. So yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we got majorly off topic with that one, but
it
was a good industry chat in regards to like
it was.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very fascinating chat. But getting back to Orbital Blues itself, how did we think the process for creating characters for Orbital Blues, how does that stack up to other games and other systems we played?
The barrier to entry is very low, I think.
Yes.
It's, you know, like as much as we talk to people about like switching games, I often tell people, I'm like, please remember that there's a barrier to entry to playing something new. There's a cognitive load involved, even when you're not the one running it or you're not trying to learn all the rules. There's a cognitive load involved, even in character creation. And this one, like, really feels like it does everything it can to minimize that and to streamline that process to like maximize, like both going into the game with something fully fleshed out, but not put like front loading that work, if that makes sense. It's like I went in with something super simple and easy. Like we get to playing the game very quickly, right? We go from deciding to play to actually playing very quickly without sacrificing like content of character, if that makes sense.
I think us actually making the characters was probably the smallest segment of my appearance on this podcast, and it was very much like a blink and you'll miss it. If you're listening to this podcast and you, I don't know, take a phone call or just kind of like zone out for a bit, you might miss us making our characters and come back and be like, who are they talking about? Who's Kit?
Yeah, somewhere in like the 6 hours we've been recording, there is a 15-minute
like,
window.
Yeah, if you do anything, if you're not dialed in for us going into that character creation, you could come back and just think, what happened? It's a very low barrier to entry because Zach is really good at easing players into rules. As a team, we designed that book in a way that presented the flow of information in a nice, easy way. Like we, at one point in the character creation process, I said, do you two want to go to this bit or go to this bit? And it's very easy for me to skip ahead and then go back again because no part of the process relies on another part of the process, save for Heart needing to know what your muscle is. I think that's the only interconnection there. And so
was that decision like to make character creation super streamlined? Was that like a conscious, like, definitely we know we want this in the game, or was it just the way that the rest of the mechanics worked?
It's the way the rest of the mechanics worked. It would have been really hard for us to make a character creation that was complicated and not streamlined. It would be like trying to complicate the process of, you know, cooking an egg. It would have been adding more barriers that didn't need to be there. We would have had to, you know, add more tables or processors or things superficially, because the end result was still going to be like a character that had the same sort of mechanical, lightweight nature as three stats, a positive and a negative command. That's 5 elements.
Yeah.
Right. You know, you have your 3 stats, a positive, a negative, your gambits and your troubles respectively, and that's it. That's you. And then you have some extra little bits you can roll for flavor, like your memento, what your weapon is, your like moniker, your name, and then you have the ship, which is like an extra character in itself. But you know, it's incredibly lightweight, and it was. So your question was like, did we set out to do it, or was it by just like happened to be that way?
Was it something like important to you that the character creation be streamlined, or did it kind of happen by virtue of the way the rest of the mechanics work? Because the rest of it is so simple. It happened by virtue of how the rest of the mechanics were, but I don't think anyone, when it comes to making games, sets out to make a convoluted character creation process. No.
Character creation tends to come about from how do we get from the stats that we think will be in here to the stats we want to be in here, and what do we want our characters to have or not have, and that's how you get from A to B on your character creation. And it probably comes a bit late. Like, I'd say character creation might be the most revisited part in game design, simply because, you know, if you come to a bit later where you think, actually, this mechanic is going to need a little bit more cogs and workings under the hood to be worthwhile, for its inclusion to be worthwhile, then I need another subsystem backing this other thing up. You know, like with a car, why do the wheels turn? Oh, because you press the pedal. No, it's because there's a bunch of other stuff working to turn those wheels as a result of you pressing the pedal. We made a pretty simple thing. To go with the car analogy, we made a Flintstones car with your feet on, like, that poke out the bottom. We couldn't have added more complex mechanics if we wanted to, because the simplicity is assign values to these 3 stats, pick a positive, pick a negative. There you go. You're done. I don't think anyone says.
I think that, like, if you added other things,
I'm going to make a character creation process that's really in depth and takes several hours. Okay, what's the rest of your game look like that necessitates that? Is it like really mechanically dense in a sort of like pseudo wargamey tactical combat way, like Lancer, or is it that this really should be a board game or a card game or something instead? If so, do that. I really think that I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. The tabletop wargaming industry, I wish, had the same kind of like explosion in creativity as tabletop role-playing games are having / had. There is a lot of really bad layout and a lot of really bad design in non-Games Workshop wargaming. Go capitalize on that market. If you want a crunchy game, go do it. I am, as a person who likes wargaming, tabletop wargaming, I am begging you to go and do that. the new edition of Bolt Action Historical Wargaming. It looks like garbage. It looks really bad. How does someone make layout that looks that bad in this day and age? It's by having people who are out of touch. Sorry, Warlord, if you are listening. Like, I know you don't have many young people into historical wargaming. I've been to those conventions. They have a medium age of about 110. You know, it's... but it's not going to get new blood in it unless people are pushing ideas into those spheres. And like Forbidden Psalm, which is a war game system based off of Morkborg, really good. Like here it is. You know, it does kind of sometimes suffer from the same problem as like a lot of Morkborg hacks, but it's, you know, it's good. It's robust. It's lightweight. There's like other games taking off. I think that if you find yourself making a mechanically complex RPG that is focused around combat, and a not insignificant number of people out there will be following down that track whether they realize it or not. Look at, could this be a miniature war game? Because the style and layout and brevity and lightweight attitude that we can sometimes bring into tabletop role-playing game, there's a gap in the market there for good design and stylish content in the war games market, where you can exercise your love of crunch as well, and it will be picked up and received and enjoyed by people who enjoy that kind of stuff. That was a bit of a wild tangent, but I do think it's something that people should know. If you find yourself making a crunchy game, know that it could be a miniatures war game. If you find yourself writing the words, this is a game that can be played with miniatures or theater of the mind, do a little experiment and spend an evening deleting that theater of the mind part of that sentence and go from there and see about, like, you know, would it be better served as a miniatures game with role-playing elements? Because I'll play that. Like, there are loads of people who play that.
There you go.
One of my favorite games is Mordheim, which has like a lot of like non-game roles that you do in between games to figure out what's going to happen in the next game that you play. Expand on that system. Have little RPG sessions between the skirmishes and the combats. And your ideas will flourish if they have the room to grow. And I think sometimes in the indie RPG sphere, we wall ourselves into a small garden of saying this needs to be easy for people to pick up, and it needs to be theater of the mind, and it needs to be a story game. But then the mechanics in there add up and add up and add up, and they don't have the room to grow in that box that you've already set out for yourself. With
and I think there's a lot of crossover between the two, like, interest groups. Like, a lot of people that like wargaming like role-playing games, and I think having something that can kind of bridge that gap in between too would be, you know, like a great way for people to kind of ease from one to the other too.
We've never put like ranges or like square footage or anything like that in Orbital Blues because, you know, it really hard to find miniatures of, like, you know, space greasers or you know, bounty hunting punks kind of thing. But also we didn't want anyone to feel like miniatures were ever something they'd need. It is a theater of the mind game. How far does a gun shoot? As far as you think a gun shoots. How far does a sniper shoot? Very far.
Further than a pistol.
Yeah. A lot further than a pistol. It's long enough.
And way, way, way further than a knife.
Yeah. How far can I throw this knife? Would it be cool if it hit the guy across the bar? Then that far. You know? So just like build a space out that is big enough to fulfill what you need from that game. And if you're doing a game where it's like, well, whether the knife hits the guy across the bar or not would be a real determining factor in the success of this narrative. If that's the case, then you need miniatures and you need set ranges. If it would detract from the flow and the cool and the necessity of that knife throw, theater of the mind.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
you don't
There
need
you
to
go.
say how far that knife gets thrown.
Exactly.
Build yourself a space to design in that is big enough for your ideas to flourish. And if you don't have the
Mhm.
right size canvas for your ideas to flourish, then that's when things get busy and they start feeling too crunchy and they start feeling over designed because you're trying to fit a lot of things into a very small space or a small projection or a small idea of what you want to make by the end of it.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Ryan? What do we...
It feels like we covered the next question for sure.
Yeah. I feel like...
We could probably just go right to our fanfic.
I mean, yeah, we can... This is the part where we make it up and pretend that we played the game.
Yeah.
This is... Yeah. I want to know... really, the big, like, fan fiction question I have is, like, Ryan and I, our characters are pretty tied together. I want to know where Reyes came from. Like, aside from me being your agent, but, like, that feels like I'm a fake agent by necessity. Like, how did we...
I feel like you
end up like this?
I feel like the twist, I feel like Charlie probably scammed JD Reyes out of a lot of money to be their agent in a sort of like pay to be published sort of way. Like, you give me money and I'll make you a star, kid. And
before I realized that was never going to happen.
all of his nepo money went straight to Charlie, and Charlie lied to Reyes enough that he believed that Charlie was a big talent agent that would land him the big roles. He is every person that he's had in his life has always been honest with him due to his pseudo celebrity status, or like, the family that he's had. And therefore, why would this person lie to me? Yeah, sure. Here's a huge chunk of credits. This person will definitely get me the role. And every time they don't get me the role, I totally eat up whatever lies they have fed me about why I didn't get this role. Sorry, kid. They were looking for someone with blonde hair for this role. Or, sorry, kid. They decided to change the script and you no longer fit the character description.
Your eyebrows are just too bushy and they couldn't do it.
I'm sorry.
No.
Your tape, your demo tape that you sent over, it was lost in the mail. By the time they saw it, they were like, whoa, who is this kid? He should have had the role. But they'd already cast the person and signed the contracts. And I think Reyes would just keep believing that indefinitely.
No.
I feel
so
really
close
bad.
every time.
I'm like a really bad person.
You are a really bad, your character is a really bad person. I
know.
You said you're
everybody
the best
else
at lying.
is like at least vaguely sympathetic.
Oh, this is where the beauty of Orbital Blues comes in. Over the course of play, you would, find something about your character that maybe not everyone knows that is maybe somewhat redeeming or endearing. Why do they lie? Is it for a reason? Why do they want all this money? Does it get sent back to somebody? Are they?
Well, that's the twist,
Are
right?
they the way that they are because of something that happened to them in their past? Are they actually much more sympathetic than it seems? Is this character of Charlie, who's like a liar, is it a front for a very hurt and vulnerable person underneath? It's something that would emerge over the course of play. And, as you level up in the sad for XP kind of ways, you gain more blues and take on more troubles. You could get another trouble, like just to take a look in the book. There's like on the run, you crossed someone you shouldn't have and fled like a dog, or in too deep, you got involved with the wrong people and did things you ain't proud of. It could be that you're being the way that you are because of some bigger problem.
Right. Which I definitely think is the case, or even like if it started as like benign enough and grew from there. But that's a thing that I'd be very interested in playing to find out.
Yeah, people say to me like, "Oh, what's a good like Appendix N for Orbital Blues?" And there's the obvious answer of like, you know, Cowboy Bebop and Firefly, etc., etc. If I was to like give a seminal one, like the best possible one that you could, it would be it'd be Better Call Saul. You can replace Albuquerque. You could say Albuquerque is a desert planet, and it's the perfect Orbital Blues like story. You have these characters who start off with good intentions and just end up getting deeper and deeper into crime, and you can take it one step further and, you know, apply the same theory to Breaking Bad, this neo-Western vibe of people who set out with good intentions, but the complexities and depths of human characters and flawed people gets in the way, and things become quite tragic and they get out of control and they spiral. Like that you couldn't get more Orbital Blues than that. And, you know, we've made these three characters who, you know, they have fun, quirky little like interactions. We have this holodeck. Charlie loves lying. And Kit has something unresolved with a previous crew, and Reyes is well connected to someone rich and famous, and they're being lied to. You have like a boiling pot there for something really dramatic that could really tear this group apart, or like lead to something really terrible happening to one or all of them. They're all going to end up finding themselves in trouble eventually, probably before the end of session one, even if they're just left to their own devices without the storyteller doing anything. If you left these three people to role play and just simmer stuck on the albatross, something's going to emerge. Kit is going to say something to Charlie, or Charlie's going to say something to Reyes that is going to, like, you know, start an argument, start someone asking questions. Something's going to happen between these three people that's going to give content for an evening of play, or a morning.
No, I feel like this is very
you
much
choose to play your RPGs. However you choose to live
this is
your
very
life.
much one of those situations where, like, I think we have built characters that have so much going on that, like, it leads to my favorite moment ever in a role-playing game, where the GM sat back and went like this and just watched us make trouble for ourselves.
Yeah, I like to do that a lot. And sometimes when I haven't prepped for a session, I will open with a dilemma or a choice that I know is immediately going to tear the party apart morally or strategically, and that gives me time to game plan actual material either for later in the session or next week. Like, hey, you find this thing, and I know that your characters or the people that you are in real life are going to have really different opinions on how you handle this. So there you go. I'm just going to think for a bit. Shout me if you need.
This group lends itself
arbitrator.
Perfectly to that. Yeah.
I'm very curious why Kit either brought in or is staying with Charlie with the bad blood kind of behind their prior relation. Like, maybe it wasn't like a bad breakup. Maybe it was just a, like, I don't know.
I think there's also a level of lying when you become the kind of person that lies all the time, of like lying to yourself too, of like,
you tell a lie long enough.
If I say it,
if I
say it enough, it will become the truth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or even, you know, perhaps it was true in the beginning and then did not continue to be true, you know?
Right.
Which is another thing that I think would have to be explored at some point, of like, what did happen there? Why are we still doing this? What, you know, was there really bad blood? Did it end badly? Or was it just a conversation of like, I don't anymore, you know? Like, I did love you, but it's just not, you know.
Right.
We've drifted apart.
Yeah.
It's something that's going to come up in
It would
play.
be really interesting to play
Right,
through, for sure.
exactly. Especially in a bottle episode, which I think we're going to have a lot of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on that holodeck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we
Goodness.
can do pretty much anything in that holodeck. That really opens up a lot of options
Absolutely.
for ridiculousness.
Like real Westerns
Mm-hmm.
or, who knows what other genres we could throw in there.
Yeah. A good train heist episode.
I always enjoy those episodes
Absolutely.
of Star Trek where they're just kind of like, yeah, we just got a bunch of Western props and we didn't have anything this week, so you're all cowboys now.
Yep.
That episode that just introduces Moriarty and Sherlock to the Enterprise. Yep. Why? Holodeck. Don't have anything else.
Yeah,
why not?
Quiet writer's room this week. Sherlock.
Mm-hmm.
Prohibition era America. I think it's really good, and whilst we can learn a lot as game runners from good television, I think you can also learn a lot from not good television as well, and be like, why do bottle episodes exist? And what do they accomplish?
Well, because we originally got picked up for 10 episodes and now they were like 12 and we're like, crap.
Yeah. But sometimes you just need you need a beach episode. You need a break. You need a breather. Because some people will say, oh, it's filler, you can skip it. No, real ones understand the good bottle episodes, good beach episodes, etc. are character development as well. And
massive,
you're not going to get the emotional weight of the big moments in the quote unquote good episodes. You're not going to feel the full weight of them unless you've gone through those like more mundane episodes with those characters.
And I think it's about pacing too. I always think about like albums, like when you listen to an album from an artist all the way through, you'll notice that it's like they don't put all their fast songs at the beginning and then like the second half is slow songs. It's like there's, like some ebb and flow, and the order of things on an album is chosen carefully. And I think it's the same thing with bottle episodes. Like sometimes you'll have a really intense arc and it kind of ends and you're like, you need that palate cleanser or you need those downtime moments for people then to like interact and decompress from what just happened, because that otherwise like the emotional intensity is too high and you need the chance to like resolve some things, bring it back down, I'm
gonna make another sweeping Sam Sleney statement here and be like, if you have a player that huffs and puffs at the end of a bottle episode and be like, well, we didn't really do anything that session, that was a bit boring, throw the whole player out.
I'm sorry, your character's been written off.
The actor has not agreed to the terms of their contract for next season, and you are going to suddenly be killed at the start of next episode. Sorry. If you reappear, it will be a different actor. Like if you have a player that's like doesn't appreciate the bottle episode, throw the whole player out.
Bottle episodes are also great when a player can't make it. When you have a session where you're down a player too, sometimes that's
you just want to cut
like
away.
You
want a little side episode that involves like a character combination maybe you're not like used to, or it's one that you don't see very often. People getting up to shenanigans. Also,
like bottle episodes are some of the funniest episodes on television. So
exactly.
Just
big fan of the bottle episode, essentially.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that we ended up rolling the holodeck because that is something that got me to that led me being able to talk about bottle episodes, one of my favorite like media tropes.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we already covered the advancement discussion.
Yeah, we did.
Way back at the beginning of our discussion on the game.
Yeah.
So I don't think we need to take it up a level.
Take it up a level.
Take it up a level.
No, I think that we have talked a lot about this game, and honestly, like a really good discussion about design in general, which I love when we have game designers on the show, because we get to really have those in-depth discussions about like all of the like inside industry and like thought process. Like I love learning about game design. and why things work the way they do. And it fascinates me. And so far, my brain does not work that way, but I love listening to people tell me that it does work for them.
I think it's really interesting because I think there are very, very few people that sit down and go, today I am going to design a game. It feels,
for sure.
It's more like soul food. It's something that evolves and happens over time, and you refine it by doing. You can't, I'm sorry, but no amount of courses and articles that you read will ever prepare you well enough, in my opinion, for making games as playing games will. And there are games that I can read and I can tell that the people who've written them don't play that many games, or they haven't played games enough, or this game enough. And it's more of a writing exercise than, than it's been like
I think being familiar with like
process.
A wide variety of games too makes such a huge difference. I think the way I look at game design has changed so drastically in the years that I've done the Annie Awards too. Like having read so many games. I mean, this is
and read more than games as well. This is a big bugbear I have. A lot of people be like, "Oh, this game is like X, and the X is another RPG, or it's the biggest new video game of the year." Whatever it is, it's something really like, really monolithic. Look at like the uptake in, dark fantasy games whenever there's a FromSoft release. I'm saying like read widely and consume widely, and play widely.
There are things you can learn from so many different types of media too. Like think like how many times have we referenced TV shows in here, and what that has to do and the way it affected the game design.
Yeah, scenes, arcs, and sessions.
Books, the lore of certain things, and like it's the variety of role playing games, things that you love in video games that you could bring to a role playing game. I love a good skill tree, like I think the more you interact with media, the more like you get a sense of what you like, what works, what do you want at a table? How do I make the things that I want? Like, where is the fun? And then do your mechanics support you having that kind of fun?
Yeah.
And I think the more familiar you are with all sorts of, games and movies and books and like, and again, knowing what else is out there too, of like, okay, does this need to be rehashed, or has somebody done it in a better way than I was thinking too? Because sometimes the answer is, I don't need to make this thing. And that's okay.
Yeah. Or you can identify things that have been done to death, and what you think is groundbreaking is actually quite trite or overdone. And if you read a bit more wider, you would have cottoned onto that and realized like, oh, actually a lot of people have done this and I can do it as well, sure, but I'll not make a big song and dance about it being unique.
Or if you do go into that, like what is it that you're doing that hasn't been done already? Because there's a lot of space for that too. Like even something that has been done to death, there are places, sometimes that it's like, this has it, like, or this would improve it or completely change the way it works, or, but that familiarity with those things is so important to making something amazing and successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And hire somebody to do layout. I mean, that's really like where
do that as well, and be prepared for people. Invite people to critique it, and invite people to, say, actually, I didn't like this. Give it to that person for free, or just say to them, hey, if you really don't like this, if you hate this, you are offended by this, I will give you your money back. But I want you to,
and give it to people that wouldn't necessarily like naturally gravitate towards something like this
absolutely
too. And I think that is really important, because if you take something that you're like, I know these people like love space westerns and you're like, now I've got this game. It's important to get their feedback. Like, does this fit what you want from that genre? But also like take it to people who like, that's not their thing. Do they still get it? You know, like if it's people that have no familiarity with that genre, can they still play it? Because that's an important and valuable bit of feedback too.
Yeah.
Or,
absolutely.
you know, like they come from something totally different. Like, can you interact with it without having that background?
Do you get this as a thing? Like, do you, does it hook? Do you understand it? Even if you're not going to enjoy it, you know, I have explained Orbital Blues to my boss at my day job, not someone who understands what role-playing games even are. I'm not even going to begin to explain what role-playing games are, but they said, have you wrote a book? I said, yes. They said, what's it about? I said, Space Cowboys. And he went, oh, cool. Conversation over. That was done. That was easy. I didn't lie. They know what my book is about, and they get it. That's fine. I showed it to them, and they went, cool. That was it. Does it pass? Does it pass the sniff test? Can someone, you know, take a whiff and go, oh yeah, that's that thing. I know what that is, or I have an idea of what that is going to be. If you can't do that with somebody, this is a sweeping statement again. If you can't do that with a normal non-RPG sphere connected person, I'm not entirely sure if you've got a big moneymaker on your hands, because you need that accessibility. And it's okay to make niche things that are weird and like not easy to understand, but know that that has audience limitations in its place.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely value of being like, this is a thing that I made for my role-playing group at home, because that's who I want to play with, and that's who will get this. And, you know, if nobody else gets it, that's why it was still worth your time.
Absolutely.
Because it, you know, I think that, and then like play test it to death. And then once you feel like you play tested it to death, probably play test it some more.
Yeah. 100%. Make sure it's robust, and just experiment. Leave yourself a big canvas, and don't pigeonhole yourself into anything. And if you're gonna come at the king, you better not miss, is like a good phrase. If you feel like you want to tackle something much bigger than you, then it needs to be well designed. It needs to look good. It needs to read good. It needs to feel good. It needs to play good. And if it doesn't, you only like have yourself to blame, although usually it's budgetary restrictions. Most often than not, but that's capitalism. Blame capitalism. That's what this all comes down
that's
to.
really the answer.
That's a great way to end this.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. And on that note,
buy Orbital Blues.
Absolutely, Sam. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about Orbital Blues.
Thank you for having me.
This was an absolute joy.
This was awesome.
Can you go ahead and remind everyone where they can find you online and the sorts of things?
I'm glad that you added where they can find me online. Where can you find me?
Please give us your street address. Thank you.
I'm in a block of flats. Which one? Knock on every door. So you can find me on Twitter at Sam Sleney, Sleney. I don't tweet very often, but I am on there if you want to at me any questions, or just kind of follow in the shadows for when I do have something to say or something to announce. Then that's appreciated. Orbital Blues Afterburn, at the time of when you probably listen to this, should be in print and on its way to people who backed it. If you picked it up on Kickstarter, if you didn't, I think you can go to BackKit for a late pledge. Orbital Blues, the core book, and all of its adventures and supplements and other bits and trinkets and things are available from Soul Muppet Publishing and many other stockists if you just have a quick Google. That is about it. I have a day job now. I no longer do RPGs full time, so I don't have like a next big project to announce or anything like that. But when I do, you'll hear about it on my Twitter or X. as we've been told we need to call it now.
No.
But I never
No.
will. Over
what
my cold, dead body.
Exactly.
Yeah, take that, capitalism.
Yeah.
I have been Sam Sleney. This has been the Carriage Creation podcast. And I've had a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in.
Call to action.
Yeah, like that.
This was another fantastic series, in my opinion. The discussion that we had here was fantastic. Sam was an excellent guest. Learning about Orbital Blues was a treat. It was a fantastic game. I definitely see how this can be a lot of fun in play from everything that we talked about. I really would want to get this one under my belt as a game that I play, because goodness, the mechanics and the fun stories that you can tell in a sci-fi setting, it sounds fantastic, and I'm a huge fan of Firefly and shows like that. So it would be really cool to be able to play in something like that. So I'm excited to see what the expansion is going to be all about, and the cool stuff they have going on there. But until then, I will just have to kind of sit tight. But before we let you go for the day, we do have some calls to action. First up, if you hadn't had a chance to check out the new shows on the network, you really should. The Ultimate RPG Podcast by James D'Amato has a third episode out, and this time it's with previous guest of our show, Kieran Gillen, where James and Kieran talk games, world building, and much more. Starwhal is also in the midst of releasing some remastered episodes, and I would be incredibly grateful if you were able to check those out as well, with them being on a 2-week release cadence starting all the way back at the beginning of the series. So there is a lot more exciting stuff happening at the network lately, and this will be a great place to catch up on hearing all about it, so stay tuned. If you like what we are doing here and want to support the show, please head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast and sign up for any of our basic tiers as a free trial. Each level has a ton of great rewards associated with it. You can join our Sticker of the Month Club at $10 and up, get a new sticker every month. You can get some custom C3 dice and a personalized thank you card handcrafted by Amelia for $5 and up, as well as chit chats every week. We're able to do them for $1 and up. We also started releasing bonus outtakes for all patrons, even at the free level. So there's no reason not to head on over there and at least sign up as a free member. It'd be great to have you there. We also like to thank all of our paying patrons personally every episode. You all mean the world to us. So let's go ahead and get started. DJG, aka Digranosaurus, Eric Bonts, and Daryl Holiday II, we appreciate your support. Thank you. Shadim Cabal, The Shyest Barbarian, and Benjamin Sweeney, you rock. Thank you. Lorcan McGinnis, Rob Fletcher, and Kevin Brown, thanks. Tentacle Duck, John Adamus, and A3 Sketchpad, thanks for supporting our dreams. Cole McCallum, Carlos Salazar, and Eric S., you all rock. Thank you. Ian Potmeyer, Sorigoth, and Liam G., thank you for your continued support. Brian Colm, Garden GM, and Tanglefoot, we can't thank you enough, but we're definitely going to keep on trying. Thank you to Blue Kryptonite, Danny, and Nicole Trainer. Thanks, Liam Murray, Kenning, and Brian Kurtz. We are glad to have you with us. And Mark E. Fair and Drew Owen, thanks for your continued support as well. And thank you to all of our future patrons. Your support means the absolute world to us. Every bit of support here helps tremendously, and we are incredibly grateful to all of you. If you are already supporting the Patreon or can't afford to do so, and you still want to show your support for the show, the next best way is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or even Facebook, and we will read your review right here and thank you personally as soon as we see it. That's all that we have for today's episode. Next series is right around the corner. where we are covering Rangers of a Broken World with Cat McDonald, which is a game you will absolutely want to check out. But until then, take care, everyone. Stay safe, drink some water, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.